Hi, welcome to Z Academy. In this video, we will be covering what is Git, what is GitHub, and how we use these tools in a software development lifecycle. This will be a beginner series if you are recently started coding. So it will help you if you are a beginner or if you are started coding using AI technologies. So before we start, this will be a beginner series where we'll be covering the all the coding essentials from the basic setup, what tools to be used, how to connect a database, how to do hosting, etc. Everything. Let us start. Before we start, what is Git? I want you to understand what is versioning. Once you understand versioning, it becomes easy to understand Git and Git process. To give you an example, here I have a Google document, added some lines here, and now I'm adding some more lines. Now, this document is created a couple of days before, and I started adding these few lines. And this is shared with other members as well, where they also added few lines into this document. If you want to restore it back, or if you want to know when what changes happened, how you will come to know what changes been made recently, or who made those changes, that will be a question mark. So luckily, Google provides something called version history. Now, if you go to the file and if you see here, there is something called version history. Click see version history option and you'll be able to see all the changes recently or from the beginning of the document, what all changes has happened. You'll be able to see it here. Not only you can see these changes, you can restore it back. For example, when we created the document first time, if I want to restore it, I can click on it. I can see what is the state of the document. So this is a fresh document. So that time, if you click here, so there is a first line been added here. This is a document which is created at on December 23rd. This is the document state. Now, if I want this version to be live, I can click on the restore this version. Google Sheets and Google Docs have these options, even the slides also. So it will be maintaining all the versions. If you share this document with multiple people and they are contributing into the document, you'll be able to come to know who did the change, what time they did, and what are the changes. And if you want to switch back to those versions, you can do it in easy manner. Similarly, when it comes to the coding, you will have thousands of lines coding written. So how do we track it? How do we track those changes? Who has done? And if you want to collaborate with other team members, how do you do that? So that is what Git, right? Now this is a one open source project you can see here where there are 1625 commits. That means there is a changes happened on this project 1625 times. If I click on this 1000 particular commits, you'll be able to see each change with a clear message here saying that also user has done this particular change, this user done this particular fix. Then so you can see there's a lot of changes. Every change has a particular unique code here, right? So this is what a GitHub is. So let us get into Git process. So what is Git? Git is it is like a time machine. You can imagine if you can do a time travel, right? You can go to the previous state and understand what happened and what change has been done. Now that is what Git is made for. It is like a time machine where you can switch back to the previous version. Whenever you do changes, it maintains the particular versioning of the changes and you can create n number of versions. And why do we need it? If you want to track what changes been done and if you want to collaborate with your team members, you can do that and you can fix those issues. For example, when you do a new deployment, there might be some bugs you found. Now, immediately you can switch back to the previous version so that users can continue to use your application or software, and you can meanwhile you can fix the those bugs which you found. If you never use the Git, you have to install it for the first time. Once you install, you can check with this particular command from your command or terminal what is the version of this particular Git. You have to first time you have to configure these two. So when we get into the practicals, we'll cover this. You can create a repository on the github.com. So what is the difference between Git and GitHub is Git is a protocol which you can enable from your local machine without connecting to cloud. You can write your code and you can keep maintaining the versions, but that all happens in local environment, not on cloud. So if you want to share that code with someone else, Then you need a platform like GitHub. So there are similar platforms like GitHub. You can look at Bitbucket, you can look at GitLab. These are various, but once you understand Git and GitHub, you can use the same process in all those platforms. Now, earlier it used to allow using username password, but now you should use personal access token. Again, this will be covered in the practical session where you will be adding the your repository using the personal access token. So if you're already having a code and you started working on this particular, what you have to do is first time when you're getting the code, that means if you just started working on a project already existing, this is the command you use, which is called git clone. And that particular repository, which you have it in the GitHub, you have to give that project URL. It will be cloned to your folder. So you have to get into a particular folder where you're maintaining your projects and then run this command. So it will pull the complete set of that source code to your local machine. You can understand this. It is like a complete code will be pulled to your local machine and one repository gets cloned. On the cloud, whatever is there, that is complete code comes into your system, sits there. So you can start editing that. And also, when you run this command, git clone, it will pull the history as well. That means whoever is worked on that particular source code, it will maintain all that history in your local machine as well, so that you can review that if required. This is the only one time you have to do. Once you do that, you can start working on the source code in your local machine. And it is a offline ready. That means without internet, you can start working on that code in your local machine. And git status. So when you start working on few files, like you started editing few files, right? What is that particular files you're working on? You have to track those things. So that's what git status can show you what is happening. How many untracked files are there? How many staged? How many modified? Again, these things will be better understood when we get into the practical. Once you do the changes, this is what you actually use these commands. I'll be sharing those commands which you will be using on a regular basis. So I pulled the code using git clone. Then I started working on that particular source code. If it is a index.html, I am doing the changes. I can give this command saying that git space add and that index.html. What all the changes I'm doing, it is actually tracking that file. Then if I'm doing multiple files, then I should use command git space add space dot. What this does, it will start tracking all the files which I'm editing, not just one file. For all the files, I should use dot. And if I am tracking a specific file, then I'll mention that file name. Once you did the changes, that means you confirm saying that, okay, you already done those changes, which is need to be pushed. Then you will create a snapshot. This is what very important in the Git. This is where it maintains a snapshot of that particular state. This is a commit command where you taking a snapshot of your code at that particular moment. Here, what you also need to understand is when you're giving this command, you need to mention a message. So this message, you can refer it at a later stage, or your team members or your colleagues can seeing this message and understand what has been done in during that time. Main, like say, good practice would be making it very clear what you are actually doing it there. So maybe you added a login page or you fixed a particular bug. In this double inverted commas, make sure though that message is clearly conveyed there. Don't give short messages saying fixed, done, so that after a couple of days, even if you're going through that particular history, you'll not be able to understand what is done, right? So this is where you created a state. Then after this, we simply push the code to cloud again. Earlier, what we pulled or used using the clone command, you are pushing the updates which you done locally to the cloud. For that, you will be using git push. So this is a simple flow where on regular basis you will be using. In your computer, you pull the code, then you did the changes, then you mention a git commit so that the snapshot is created and you push it. So using this process only, your 90% of your daily work is done. So this is your daily flow. So next day when you log in, what is the next step? Since you already have the repository in your local machine, next day when you log in, you'll be using you'll be using command called git pull. So what this does, git clone pull the complete project, not just one file or two files. When you run the git clone, it is actually downloaded the complete source code from cloud to your local machine and it maintained a local copy. So next day when you started working, you should use a command called git pull if you're working on the same project. So what git pull does is it will not pull the complete source code. It will pull only the changes what happened yesterday. That means along with you, there might be other team members or your co-developers done lot of changes on that source code, right? They also push their updates yesterday. So no, those changes alone will come and sit in your system. For that, you will be using git pull. This will you'll be using on daily basis. If you're working on a project for a couple of days, on that entire days, you'll be using this particular command so that you need not to download the entire source code again and again. So if you have a 100 MB of source code yesterday and there is a 10 MB changes happened, only the 10 MB changes will be pulled next day. So you can understand, right? What is a git clone and git pull? Git clone is when you're starting the new project. When you started working on a new project, you will use the git clone to pull that to your local machine. When you have a already working on that project, then you will use git pull. Here it downloads the entire repository. It git pull does only the new changes it will pull. Only done once. This is used regularly. So this will be your daily routine. This document also I'll share it in the PDF document. You can use it for your reference. Now, what is the other scenario? You might be working on a project already in your local machine. Now, what if you want to initiate with a Git and maintain the versions? Then push it to the GitHub by creating a new project, fresh project on the GitHub, right? This is what it has to be done. If you are already having a project in your local machine, in that folder, you should run git init. Then you start adding the files by giving this particular command git space add space dot. Then you will do the same process of committing with a message, clear message. Then mention the branch. This branch also you'll understand slowly. So we'll be using main branch for now. But when you're working on a big projects, you will be assigned with a particular branch. Then we'll add that to GitHub repository and we use the git push command. So from your local system, all those changes what you have until then, it will be pushed to the cloud. So in the next session, I'll be covering the practicals. Also, I want to request join our school community. It is free to join. We'll be adding the new courses in this particular community. You can get all the support. We will be sharing offers, voucher codes where you can get AI tools up to 100% discount. Join the community today. It is free. Thank you.